But it's just beginning. The Pensioner Bondholders Forum have been addressing a news conference this afternoon on the matter. They want government to exclude their funds from the program. Dr. Aduenchi is convener of the group.
Whether or not the time for the closure of the invitation is ended or is extended, we have said we are not tendering in our bonds. And so, regardless of the fact that it will be ending or it will be extended later on, it's not going to affect us. So they should rest assured that their money and their investments are being protected. We are trying to protect their investment in the government bonds. And we believe that the government would heed to our request and protect these vulnerable group from the hardship that this exchange program would bring to them. We would embark on convergence. We will convene at the Ministry of Finance and try to get the minister to speak with us if we don't get the minister today. Because of the numbers that may go, you need to inform the police. Otherwise, today we're going to go in our numbers, but we would have breached the laws of the land. To further press home our request, about 50 of our members, our members are weak. So we are saying at least 50, those who can walk there will come. To further press home our request, about 50 of our members intend to converge at the premises of the Ministry of Finance on Monday, 23rd of January 2023 at 9 a.m. and demand that the minister holds a meeting with our representatives that day. We will leave the premises of the ministry at 12 p.m., by which time we hope the minister would have held the requested meeting with our representatives. This letter serves as a notification to the police for the intended gathering. We will come there. Those who cannot stand, they will come with their wheelchairs to sit and wait patiently for the minister.
Well, there's a lot more is happening in Parliament. The minority is demanding a suspension of the program. They also held a news conference a couple of hours ago.
To major issues with the domestic debt exchange program and the reason behind the minority's strong position advocating for its suspension. Implications on the entire financial banking sector. Ghana's financial sector will be severely and adversely impacted by the domestic exchange program. With over 60 billion locked up in government bonds, the non-receipt of any interest this year and paltry sums in subsequent years will prove the undoing of some banks. They simply will not make it. They survive on interest, on what they are holding on to. In the case of state-owned banks, as much as 70% of their annual revenue comes from their investment in government bonds. There is one of the state banks, it has not even published its annual bank statement in the last 3 years. The minority will still run after them to show respect to the law establishing them and their requirement to fulfill that. Not paying them any interest in 2023 will effectively sound the death knell to these banks, with its attendance consequences on depositors and employees who would have to be laid off, including those who own the money they are holding on to. Restructuring domestic debt will undermine the health of the banking sector, since capital adequacy will become a major challenge. Another justification why we are calling for the suspension of the debt exchange program. Pension funds will suffer a significant drop in value, especially Tier 2 and 3 pension payouts will drop further from their already low levels. We are sure that pension funds will not be affected. Thanks again to this minority, then led by our ranking member on finance, when we insisted an isolated pension for special attention and exclusion in the debt exchange program. Now, effects on individual bondholders. The inclusion of individual bondholders in the domestic exchange program, contrary to initial assurances from both the president and his finance minister, will all but wipe out Ghana's middle income status and impose high suffering on them, their families, and their dependents. So how come that initially they themselves were convinced that individual bonds will not be affected? What explains the sudden U-turn? We demand transparency, and they are simply not transparent, even in the way they are managing this particular matter. Yesterday, about 1.3 million affected individual bondholders petitioned Parliament for a reversal of the government's debt exchange program. Another justification of our position that the initiative be suspended. This must be the largest and voluminous petition in a single matter ever presented to Parliament in our country's history. It is inconceivable to accept that individual bonds will be affected by a domestic. So in view of this, we in the minority call on government to immediately suspend the domestic debt exchange program and engage more comprehensively in consulting stakeholders and the Ghanaian people. We call on all stakeholders that probably they can consider a national economic dialogue on the state of the economy, and in particular the domestic exchange initiative or program. How do we work it? Probably the consultation and council will guide us as a country how to walk out of this imminent economic crisis. And you see, they are still working arrogantly. And news coming in. Instead of telling Ghanaians that they have suspended the debt exchange, they are announcing a second extension to 31st January. It will help them. Let them be told that it will help them. They should suspend it, thoroughly engage and consult, called an emergency economic crisis forum, bring together heads and experts in economic management. The consequences ahead of Ghana is dire should we fail to get the executive approval of the IMF between April and June, where we sit as a minority, contingent on a plausible failure of this debt exchange program. The IMF may not happen, and its consequences on all of us and the future of our economy in the next 3 to 5 years will be a walking, sorry state of the economy, with its consequence on employment, livelihood, and cost of living. We will embark on a nationwide roadshow to foster deeper understanding of what they are doing. So very soon, we'll deploy our teams into the region to appreciate the level of the economic crisis and their inability to manage it.
So far, the campaign by individual bondholders has gathered more than 100,000 subscriptions so far. So let's broaden the conversation here on the polls. Joining me now via Zoom is Dr. Aduanchi, convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. We also do have others who will be joining us and when we have them. But Doc, let me welcome you first of all to the program. The last time we were engaging, you were confident that indeed you were going to obviously negotiate your way through with government and get the way forward. How is that looking like now, knowing that the deadline has been extended?
So I think once the government has extended this deadline, we believe it has extended it so that we can complete or we can do the necessary engagements and consultation and come out with a final position. And I believe the final position will include a total exemption for the pensioner bondholders, as has been done to pension funds.
So aside the total exemption, if government by the 31st, through your engagement, is deciding to put another proposal on the table, what's the level of concession you're able to make on this?
No, the level of concession, we have said, and we keep on repeating, that there is no difference between the pension funds in the hands of the individual and the pension funds yet to be given to the individual. So there is no room for concession. We want to be treated the same way as the funds that are supposed to be given to people are treated. Somebody is coming on retirement today or next week. Her or his fund is not affected. Why would I, who came on retirement last year, invest my funds into a government security and be affected? So we believe that whatever government will come out would include a total exemption for the pensioner bondholders, and regardless of what the government would do or would negotiate with the other bondholders, the institutions, and the individual bondholders. We think that for the pensioners, they are a vulnerable group. We cannot recover.
Right.
If somebody is 70 years and you are going to put his money there for another 12 years, 17, 15 years, you want him to be 80-something before he gets his final redemption, that is not something that we want to take. So we believe, yes, like government believes, that people on pension should not suffer. People who are coming on pension should not suffer. Then people who are on pension also should not suffer. And that our bonds should be exempted from the exchange program.
Doc, just stay on with us for a little while. Joe Jackson is also an economist, is joining the conversation. He'll be providing us with some perspectives to this. But even before I put that question to him, we're just in the last few minutes receiving a statement from the Bankers Association. And Doc, this is a question to you as well. The Bankers Association of Ghana indicating that they're advising you, the individual bondholders, not to sign the debt exchange program. Did you plan this together?
No, we don't have anything to do with what the banks are doing. If they had seen that it is not sound to do that under the circumstances and they are advising their clients, they have every right to do that. We just advise individual pensioners. And of course, sometimes your advice will also be taken by others. That look, we have petitioned government to exempt us. So don't submit your bonds. We believe that government will do what we think is needful and exempt us. And they also believe that under the circumstances, it is not the right thing to accept with these conditions. So maybe they also believe that the conditions must be varied, negotiated, so that it will always be there that you have to negotiate with your creditors and come to a solution, a conclusion, a point. If you decide not to negotiate, you can't be successful. It is only through negotiation with your creditors that you can manage a successful debt restructuring program.
And talk of the signing of the contract. Many did not know what was going to happen today. At least not. We did not see the extension of the deadline coming through. Are you aware, or otherwise, if any of your members has signed on to the program already, or if you're picking up intel about the possibility that some people are signing?
We are talking for all retirees across the country. Somebody hasn't even heard us. And people who have heard us might have heard even late. Maybe until last week when we had our press conference. So you cannot say no pensioner has tendered. And again, even people who have heard us were contemplating doing that because of the issues that people have raised surrounding the bond. That if you don't tender in, you'll be worse off. And A pensioner who is having his money, if somebody say that, well, it is better, half bread is better than none, so tender in and save at least half of your money rather than losing also. When these messages are going around, definitely some pensioners will be tempted to tender in their bonds. But what we are saying that once government exempt us, even if somebody has tendered in, the thing that the government has to do is to just not accept that tender because it is not an offer. It's an offer that is being made, and it's only when government has accepted it that it becomes a binding contract. So if even pensioners would put in their tender in because of lack of assurances that they will not get their money, so well they want to save at least half bread is better than none, and they have tendered in. We will still, after we have been able to go through the government, we still would ensure that government rejects all this or all tenders that has been made by retirees.
I'm interested in the legal conversation as well. It's been going on for some time now, with lawyer Martin people leading that charge, at least for 250 persons. Are you considering taking that seriously, knowing that government is not backing down? 31st is the deadline, which means that government may or will have to go through or push through this document. We've seen, posts from sources close to government indicating that there will be, quote, a dire consequence for our economy if we do not go ahead with the debt exchange program as it is now. So will you consider that option?
Well, the option of court, going to court, is when somebody has breached a contract. And the breaching of the contract will happen when you don't tender in your bonds and your old bond still remains intact, and the maturity period or coupon date comes and the government is unable to pay. Government defaults on the payment of the coupon or the retirement, the face value. Then you have every right to go to court and sue for your money, your interest, or whatever that is due you. But as we say, we are all interested in making sure this exchange program succeeds. The only thing we are saying, and when I say that, where the channel you have used going forward will not lead you to a successful end. So take another route, come back and take another route, which will lead you to a successful end. This is exactly what I'm saying, that the route that we have taken would not lead the country to a successful bond debt negotiation, restructuring. So now that the government has extended this period, and I saw a small note from the minister, which say as a result of what individual bondholders and others are saying, if they think that there should be some thorough or some further negotiation, that is how we can resolve this matter. Once it is negotiated, individual bondholders, institutional bondholders, all bondholders would come together and say, yes, this is what we want to do to help our government succeed, help the nation succeed. We are in this country and we don't want this country to fail, to become a failed nation. We want to survive. But we need to structure certain things so that the individual has some things that he has given away. Government also has something that it has given away. And together, we move this exchange program forward and have a successful program.
I was just picking some of the notes from the address you gave a while ago at the press conference, indicating clearly that there are a raft of activities or actions that you intend to undertake to mount more pressure on government. And this time around, you're also involving Parliament. What's the next line of action for you as pensioners?
Well, after the press conference, we said it there that we will be trying to see if we can get a minister. A representative of the forum went to the minister's office. We didn't have him to have a meeting with us, but somebody was sent to meet with us, and we even have to give him another copy of the petition for the president, the officer, to follow up, right, and give me a call as to what they have done so far. But the indication we had was that it's been handled, but we are still waiting to hear what has been done. So
Do you get a sense that the finance ministry is not willing to engage you on this?
well, maybe is that the volume of pressure and work on the minister now. I agree. That's why in our first letter we recognize that we know he has a heavy responsibility now, especially in the midst of these issues. So that might not be able to grant us a hearing, but we were trying and praying that he got us some time for hearing before the end of the period for the invitation. Maybe the minister also would think that now that he's going to extend it, that at least our first demand that he meets before the end of the invitation period, he still have some time because the invitation period has been extended, and he can make time to meet us whilst the offer is still, the invitation is still open. So let's keep all hopes that we will finally meet the minister.
Yeah.
Even if we don't meet, sometimes we take it that if your request is being handled and nobody is meeting you, but it's being handled, then you have no problem waiting to receive a positive feedback.
I guess hope is all you can have for now. Let's see if the Finance Ministry will indeed engage you, Dr. Aduentwi. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Pulse. The minority earlier holding a press conference indicating that there are dire economic consequences for us if this debt exchange program is not handled carefully. Fortunately, we're joined in studio now by a ranking member on the Finance Committee, Dr. Kaysel Atofosun. Thank you for joining us on The Pulse. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
We're not starting the year on a good note. Obviously, this is where we are. What do you feel is accounting for that deadlock between government and the individual bondholders?
I think it's lack of engagement. Okay, you cannot take someone's money without the person's consent or some form of engagement. Ghana obviously will not be the first country in the world. Ghana will not be the first country in the world ever to have restructured its domestic debt. In fact, we are the first country in the entire of Africa ever to restructure domestic debt. But there are best practices across the world. Jamaica, in the year 2003, restructured its debt. In the year 2003, it was regarded as the best practice because of the level of engagement that it went in for public buy-in, understanding the problem the nation had, and for the public to understand that there was the need for people to sacrifice. So people sacrificed. In the case of Ghana, there's little engagement. We called earlier for an economic dialogue for us to appreciate the magnitude of the mess that we are in. Government refused. They've been engaging people piecemeal without telling them the nitty-gritty. Can you believe that prior to the budget, even Parliament is not aware of what is going on? There's no official statement before Parliament to debate what is going on. No MP is aware officially about what is going on.
But you were informed, as contained in that document, that there would be a debt exchange program.
They said they would do some debt exchange program. But the details as announced outside of Parliament is not before Parliament. That is one. Number two, it is only until December 25th, the Christmas Day, that a press release was made by the Ministry of Finance suggesting that individual bondholders will be included. No engagement, no consultation, but you are taking somebody's money from his pocket. These things will happen. So you see, that is why we are saying that they should suspend the entire debt exchange program and rather go back to the nitty-gritty, the basics. Do engagement. Let us all be part of it. Political parties, civil society, academia, let's all go to the table, understand the magnitude of the problem, and then we can design a structure that will solve.
There are some who disagree with you. He may not be a government official, but there's someone really close to the corridors of power. I'm talking about Gabi Asare-Chudako. He's posted on Twitter indicating that the alternative is dire if we don't progress with this debt exchange program. After all, your bonds will be, quote, worthless. That's how he describes them right now.
The alternative is certainly dire because they have created a cancer. The problem was resolvable. We could resolve the problem. In fact, we could have easily remedied the situation if we have dealt with the problem earlier. Today, we have encountered a cancerous situation where the country will have to go through some form of chemotherapy in the form of debt restructuring. but we need to know what type of debt restructuring we are going to do. And even before you go through debt restructuring, we need to understand the level of pain people are going to go through. Don't take people's money by force. On the same Twitter page, their own, among themselves, they are fighting. A colleague, a member of parliament from their side has also tweeted on Gabi's post saying that you could have engaged. If you had engaged, this wouldn't have happened. So you see, the trouble here is that the foundation of lack of engagement is destroying the people of Ghana and our livelihood. So we should be careful. There may be no alternative. But question is, the first, now who caused them? Two, why are you not engaging? Is it the only option? We need to understand.
No, here's the fear, that if we don't go ahead and speed up the debt exchange program, there may be a serious problem on our hands. Simply because if government continues to compromise, we've seen that with the labor unions, right, when they said, well, don't go near our pension funds, we won't agree on that. Government eventually compromised. Some say this was going to be the alternative, then following on the individual bondholders. If we compromise, and I'm using that word, quote and unquote, as a nation, on the individual bondholders, hypothetically speaking, what should be the next step or option for government in this situation?
We are missing the point. The first point is that what is the magnitude of the economic crisis the country is facing? If restructuring is the only option, what are the mix of debt restructuring we need to go through? And if that is ABC that you need to go through, who in particular are you going to take the person's money? And what sort of engagement you have to engage the person? There's no engagement on this matter. Yet you need to take people's money. So you want to take my money without telling me.
Yeah, but if we don't... Okay, so what's the minority position? And that's what we need to understand. Is it the case that, well, you could go ahead, take individual bondholders and their funds, but do that while engaging them? Or you are totally averse to the idea of touching individual funds?
So first of all, we are saying the country needs a proper engagement on the magnitude of economic crisis we face, so that we can get a proper buy-in and to resolve the problem going forward. Because we know something must be done. That's the first point. Second point, we do not believe that domestic debt restructuring is an option. Because
so you don't believe in the program
domestic debt restructuring is an option. You can do some form of external debt restructuring where you target commercial and bondholders, and then also you target bilateral bilateral loans. But domestic debt restructuring is a no-go area. We have said that domestic debt restructuring is like a surgery. You only do it knowing very well that it can save your life. But if you're not too sure, don't try and kill yourself, because the repercussion can be very severe. We have seen countries going through debt restructuring. In the end, we saw what happened. For example, we have a country that the nation is going through sovereign insolvency stress. In other words, the country is bankrupt or broke. Today, what the government is seeking to do is only to transfer the burden of insolvency from government level to the private sector, to individuals and to banks. Is that what we want? If care is not taken and Ghana goes through this, what will happen is that a lot more middle class will become poorer. The rich will become poorer, and we will not have anyone in this economy as middle class. The pizza eaters and the ice cream eaters will all go away. Number two, banks, at the end of debt restructure, the financial sector will have to collapse again. I'm already seeing about 5 banks already going to shake because of what is going to happen to them if we allow it to go. So do we really want to transfer the burden where the state is insolvent to the private sector, and what will be the repercussion going forward? So we need to design it carefully, and that is why we are saying that it is for you and I to sit down and jaw for us to find a proper mix to resolve our...
As for that consultation, so I guess we are over it. Government has made it clear that they would not engage. I mean, we've heard this over and over.
If you don't engage, you can't take people's money
but beyond that, you know the nuances of the economy. You understand the figures, and I mean, what's happening to our economy now. It's not as though you're simply a politician. You understand what's going on.
What is going on.
If you were to be a financial advisor to an individual bondholder, in this case, you are faced with the option of opting for government's debt exchange program, which will eventually bring back your returns, but not immediately. And the alternative, which is going to court. You're suing a sovereign, and the implication is that government could say, well, I'm not giving you the money.
I would take my chances, because government, I believe, cannot decide to unilaterally take my money without my consent And for that reason, I will not sign on to it. I will take my options if I'm an individual and a bondholder.
Some say you're doing this as the minority simply because you have a political advantage in this.
No. You see, Ghana will be the first country on record since Adam to have ever restructured its domestic debt without consultation. It will fail. The reason why we keep changing the goalpost in terms of the dates is because the fundamentals are not in place. We have not engaged. Engage first. Get people's buy-in. Let them be aware that there will be the need for them to sacrifice something or to contribute to the problem. Other than that, this will go nowhere, I can assure you. We'll come back in the next 2 weeks from today, and we will also notice that the government is seeking another deadline. They will keep changing the goalposts until that kingdom come, until they go back to the basics. The basics must be right first before you can have it.
Parliamentary oversight. You have that power, even as minority in parliament, at least seeking some answers from the sector minister, the finance minister. If the House resumes, what set of actions are you likely to take?
We are going to do one of two. Either invite the minister to brief the House on the happenings with our debt, and then also file an urgent question for the Minister of Finance to answer to Parliament why Ghana today is bankrupt and what steps he's taken to ensure that the country comes out of it, and why he has not engaged even the elected representative of the people, and he thinks that he can go this alone. Because let me tell you, he's restructuring Ghana's debt, not his personal debt. It calls on the people of Ghana to have a proper buy-in on how to restructure our debt and to find out who is bearing the burden. Today, he pick and choose. I'm hearing even cabinet isn't aware in some extent. Whether they are aware or they are not aware, I see them as one government. They've messed this country up so badly that we all need to get involved and help resolve the problems. It's not up to him alone. The very person that, took this country into a point of no return, a bottomless pit, is telling us that he's taking us out at the time that they are not taking any action to cut down government expenditure. We need to be aware of this. We need to get involved. We need to be sure that they are taking Ghana through the right procedure for us to be able to come back to a proper debt sustainability and a healthy economy. We are not seeing that. And so we will get involved in the coming months.
Late last year, the finance minister indicated that some of these fiscal, reforms and policy measures we're seeing was leading to one end, which is the IMF austerity program, which we intend to assess the fines by the first quarter of this year. Looking at what's happening now, what's your outlook in terms of assessing the program?
The IMF program, or in the terms of the budget?
Well, the program itself, okay, because that's our target.
The program itself is at risk because Ghana will need to give sufficient assurances to the IMF. And the key word is sufficient assurances to the IMF that they have taken steps, or we have taken steps to bring the country back to debt sustainability. Where are the sufficient steps? They have not. We are nowhere near the sufficient steps. Today, we have announced debt restructuring, domestic debt restructuring. We have also announced that we will not be able to pay interest or coupons on Eurobonds, as well as bilateral debt. But you need to go the next step of negotiating and getting sufficient assurances that the negotiation is going well, and obviously you will achieve results in a couple of months. But what are we seeing? We have seen a president and a government that since they announced the IMF program, not proper engagement has been done. Proper engagement has not been done, and as a result, we are seeing the outcome. So where do you get that sufficient assurances? I can confidently see clearly that Ghana will not be in a position to get an IMF program by the first quarter because of what is happening. Because what is happening does not give him the confidence for me to project that we are on the path of getting an IMF program in the first quarter. Let's only pray that by the second quarter, the government will understand the need to do proper engagement and to move this country into a proper path where we can be able to give the IMF sufficient assurances that will bring back our debt to sustainable limits.
And very finally, you were pointing out to the infighting that we're already witnessing. well, that's how you choose to describe it, between rank and file of the NPP and some of your colleague MPs after today's press conference, indicating that, well, this reinforces the call that you made late last year for the finance minister to go. Is this necessary at this point to go back to those issues and to try and pick and choose whose fault it is that our economy is where it is today?
Okay, first, the MPP MPs are very hypocritical. They failed to join us because the forum was for us to impeach him or to remove him through Article 82 of the Constitution. We are members of Parliament. We work with laws, the Constitution, and the standing order. It's clear. They failed to join us. They prefer going out to say that the minister must go. They don't mean it. It's only politics. But let me tell you, our minister responsible for finance must leave and to give this country an opportunity to recover. Because, my brother, the truth is, he's the very one who actually drove this country to the bottomless pit, to a point of no return. You can't be the one who destroys the economy and be the same person claiming that you are going to take the country out. In my village, we have something called reckless drivers, driver banza. This driver banza, if you are in a car and you see a driver banza driving you to a point of no return, what we do is that you tell the driver to stop, and then you give the opportunity to a competent driver, someone who is not reckless, to take you to safety. That is what Ghana needs. We need to get this driver banza to stand out and allow someone with competence hands to take Ghana to safety. That's what we need as a country. Until he leaves, the same person that has destroyed my livelihood and coming to take my money, you want the same person to sit and tell me that, hey, bondholder, pensioner, even though I've destroyed your livelihood, please give me the rest of your money, and in the end, you'll be fine. Is he going to get the confidence of these guys? No. No. So you see, it is time for him to go, give the country, the finances of the country, to another person who I believe will actually have the confidence, the kind of competence, and also the sympathy of the people to say that I'm not the one who caused it. Help me to resolve it for all of us. And I'm sure at that point, we will be able to salvage this country.
Well, that's the immediate term. In the short term, in about 2 years, the general elections is next. You're on the ticket of the NDC.
Correct.
Your party says you are the alternative.
Correct.
I'm just wondering how, for instance, if indeed the NDC forms the next government, you'd be able to deal with such a crisis like this.
We can. I mean, as I'm telling you, you should understand that this is a country, this is a government that have introduced set of policies that they've so attached to, and these policies has actually driven the country's economy aground. First of all, you have to unwind these policies, but because they are so emotionally attached to the policies and they only believe in the politics, they don't want to unwind these policies. Cut them off. They have a policy of one problem, one loan. Every single problem they think they should confront it with one loan. That is recklessness. Okay, this is a government that has introduced the largest size of government in the history of this country. Go to the office of the president and see the number of staffers there. They need to cut it. So government need to lead by example by cutting down on expenditure and remove some of these flagship programs that is actually producing nothing. And by cutting down expenditure and to ensure that they will rake in enough revenue and to improve the primary surplus, and to use the primary surplus to reduce the debt going forward. I'm sure at that point, that government will get a sympathy of the ordinary Ghanaian. That government will get a sympathy of the international community, and things will come together for the betterment of this country. So we can tell you that we have set of policies available to confront the problem head on if given the opportunity today. The people of Ghana will see that the NDC is ready to take us to a level that we'll all be proud of. But let me say this. Never in our history has any government seen this kind of recklessness. Ghana has never seen any form of recklessness in this magnitude. Yes, every government comes with some problem, scandal left and right. But this kind of mismanagement has never been seen in the history of this country before. Yet the people in office are not remorseful. They are not remorseful. They think it's business as usual, and they've done well, and so they can only go on. All what they do is to quote Bible quotations. But you see, Bible quotations will not fix the economy.
It's what you do. Policies is what will face the economies, and they have to do that.
Well, I'm grateful for your time, and thanks for joining us here on The Pulse. That's Dr. Kisela Tuforsen, Ranking Member on Parliament's Finance Committee. You're watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. When we return, we'll talk about some other issues, including the National Cathedral. It's all coming up. Please stay.